morning, everyone. I've just realised that I printed this off in really small type, so I do miss my glasses working, so normally have it in double size, but let's get going. We've got behind us, or we did have behind us, the names of the new staff that have been joining us, so a really strong welcome to all of them. And of course, this is Adrian's last all-staff meeting. So Adrian Smith is going to be leaving us in a few weeks, and a large part of today's meeting is going to be hearing his reflections on his time as Vice-Chancellor, but also reflections on higher education landscape and other things, and look forward to hearing that. We are now looking for Adrian's permanent successor. And we also have appointed an interim Vice-Chancellor who is Peter Cogman. Many people will recognise Peter. He's been a familiar face around the university for many years. He was formerly Principal of St George's, but also a trustee of the university for some years as well. So he's quite well versed in the university, and I think can sort of hit the deck running with regards to understanding the role and so forth. Peter's appointment is it's either 6 months or 12 months, really dependent on the availability of the permanent successor. And the appointment process for the permanent successor has started. We've appointed a search company called Hodges and Bernstein, and they are working on a long list. There's also a formal advert out there, which I think the closing date is the middle of July, quite sure. And we'll be shortlisting over the summer and interviews in the autumn. The interview itself will be chaired by Sir Richard Dearlove, and it will have both representation from our member organisations, but also our independent trustees. And they are being supported by a wider advisory group, which is similarly equally balanced. So there's going to be quite a lot of input into the appointment. But so far we've had some really interesting names come forward, so look forward to reporting more on that in the future. I've just come from a meeting upstairs, a lot of you will have been at it, where we talked about the facilities management review, and I gave an overview of where we are and what we're now doing. We are now doing 3 investment proposals and developing business plans for those investments based on a premise that some of those investments will involve in-sourcing. I described upstairs that Board of Trustees were very, very reticent about making an ideological move to in-source staff. They wanted to see that investments in doing so would have a sort of a charitable basis and support the university's academic mission. The 3 reviews are around security, they're around front of house customer service, and they're also around student residential life. All of those reviews will cover a range of all of the 5 different contracts that we have, and whilst others would like us to be clearer on timelines and who and when and so forth, we're unable to do that until those business proposals are brought forward. They will cost money. If we were to do everything, the analysis showed about £3 million ongoing costs and about £2.5 million implementation costs. We don't think it will cost that when we get to it because of the different ways in which we might implement it. But we've got to look at that in the context of where we are at the moment. This year we have an £8 million deficit budget. That's from the investments that we've strategically made. We decided some years ago to make a series of deficit budgets in order to make investments. Those investments are paying off. Our recruitment into worldwide programs is paying off. Investment in co-sector is paying off. It's now in surplus. And our investment in School of Advanced Study is paying off. We're making a lot of impact on the research facilitation agenda that SAS is following. However, we are still going to be in deficit next year, something in the order of about £4 million, and we won't go into surplus until the year after. In order to prepare not only for FM transition, but also to prepare for probable increased pension costs, you've seen all of that in the news, as well as pay additional cost because we still don't have a conclusion to the current pay round. We are making some provision in the current year budget, which will be a cost-saving budget. So less than we anticipated last year. It's going to be a real terms cut because we're not going to apply inflation to the coming year's budget. It will be a static budget from last year. And on top of that, we'll be working through some organisational changes with a view to making some savings as well. And that will be following the strategic aim of one university of consolidation and facing in the same direction with regards to what our agenda is as a single university. So that's all I would say on FM because I covered it in depth upstairs, and I won't be taking any questions on FM at the end, but any other questions are welcome. There's been some senior management changes in the university. Kim Frost, left last week, a dearly admired colleague and friend to many, and I'm sure he will stay in touch with us. And Stuart Brown, also a very well-liked colleague, will also be shortly leaving us to take up a role at Reading University, and we wish Stuart very well. In the meantime, Jake is going to be acting up as ICT Director, and Ross Frendo has been appointed as Director of Compliance and Secretary to the Board, which is part of Kim's former role as University Secretary. In terms of other things to celebrate, the University of London website, which you'll be familiar with, we launched it, I can't remember now, it's about 6 months ago, maybe it's longer. It's up for an award, and some colleagues are going to Manchester on Thursday to hopefully bring home a trophy, so fingers crossed there. Co-sectors won some very significant contracts recently with their moving virtual learning environment. And they've also become a partner with Blackboard for a new product to support disabled access to online resources, so accessibility. I can't remember the name of the product. Ali, that's it. Ali. But it's been adopted by SAS and by Worldwide, who are the first customers for it, and it's very well thought of, so we're hoping great things out of that. Within the School of Advanced Study, the Warburg Institute has been awarded a €6.3 million grant from the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research. So that's a fantastic grant to have been achieved. And Dr. Damien Short, who's the Director of the Human Rights Consortium, is now part of a huge £8 million research project that's going to investigate the facts behind fracking, which I know has a degree of controversy. Since the last All-Staff meeting, there have been quite a few events and activities. The Living Literature event that featured Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in May turned Senate House into a Gothic horror story, and there were some brilliant costumes that evening. I really enjoyed that, and the cocktails don't get any weaker. The London Graduate Fair, organised by Co-Sector, attracted thousands of students last month, so that was really, really successful and goes from strength to strength. And the University of London Worldwide held an annual celebration of Charter Day, and we thank everyone for the sunshine that we're all enjoying at the moment. The event passed very well, and awards were made to staff at that event. And of course, the Cup's coming home. The Houston Cup came home to the University's Challenged event, the team called University Challenged won the trophy for 2018. I also wanted to make mention of the Open Gardens in Gordon Square, which was very well attended, and there's some great costumes there as well. Carl, I forgot the name of the dog. Ralph. Ralph made a starring feature in that. And coming up, we've got the new Rights of Women exhibition at the library, which opens on Monday. And I sort of encourage all staff to go and see that exhibition free. We have the ULIT graduation ceremony in Paris I think it's next week, end of next week. And we have the staff summer party at the end of July at Student Central. My last notice from here is to encourage everyone who hasn't done so already to contribute to the intranet survey, where we're looking at views on the intranet, how it might be improved, and what you want from it in the future. So that's it for me for the time being. And did Mary come back into the room? No, she had to go off to do something outside. So I'm going to change the order of the agenda, Rick and Adrian. If you'd like to come up to the stage and do your... Oh, Mary. Perfect. So Mary's going to give us an update on leading women, and then we'll pass over to Rick and Adrian.
Thank you very much, Chris. Living up to my reputation of being just-in-time Mary. I do apologise. I need another meeting as well, not just wandering around. So, where have we got to with the Leading Women campaign? So, on the website we've now got almost 140 women featured, and we're working hard on the final few profiles, liaising with the member institutions to reach the magic 150. And you can see there that there are blogs now appearing on the same page as the gallery of the Leading Women, and recent blogs have been on subjects as diverse as women in sport, an antidote to the World Cup fever, or maybe going along with accompanying it, Virginia Woolf, and Noor Inayat Khan, who is a World War II spy who has a commemorative statue in Gordon Square. Go and have a look at it. Recent events, you can see here on the screen the huge range of events that have taken place since April that were wholly or partially delivered in conjunction with the Leading Women campaign. And I'm both impressed and grateful to everybody for taking up the theme so wholeheartedly and getting involved. So thank you to everybody. Oops, sorry. Oh. There it is. And there's plenty more to come. On the screen is a snapshot of some of the activities in the coming months. And you can recall that I was keen to ensure that we have a lasting legacy from the year of celebrations. And we have progress on that as well. There were dozens of entries to the art student competition, or the student art competition, let's put it the right way around. And Ariel Tsay has been selected. Ariel is a final year student at the Slade School of Art at UCL. And we hope that her artwork will be installed in Torrington Square in the autumn. And in addition, in May, it was 149 years since the original cohort of 9 women sat their exams. And we will be acknowledging that point in time, along with the anniversary in August of the decision by the University Senate in 1868, the 150th anniversary indeed, to allow women to sit those special examinations. And then, finally, a reminder to everybody of how you can support or get involved in the campaign. So you can suggest a blog post, you can volunteer to support activity, you can follow the hashtag Leading Women on social media, you can tell friends, family, others about the campaign, and, not or, but and, pick up a badge or a brochure in the Crush Hall. So, more to come. It's exciting so far. It's an important anniversary and something that we want to look at not only for now, but for how we can make this work into the future, how we can make it meaningful for the future. So thank you all very much, and thank you to everybody who's participated so far. Thank you.
And now can I welcome Rick Rylance and Adrian Smith to the stage. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
Are these picking us up? Okay. Is that you? Okay, well, for those of you who have not been paying attention, Adrian has been VC here since 2012. Before that he was principal of Queen Mary and had a very distinguished career as a mathematician and statistician. Not the least of his accomplishments is he's a translator of very, very hard songs from Italian. He was, when I first got to know him a little, he was Director General of Science and Innovation at the Department of what was then called Business, Innovation and Skills. And from there he came here to us at the University of London. So, let me begin, Adrian, by taking you back to that point when you were very successful Director General, no more so actually in my opinion, but you made the decision to come here. So what was your thinking, and what did you think the challenges were going to be when you arrived?
So when I was Director General in BIS, one of my jobs was effectively to be the boss of the bosses of the Research Council. And of course Rick was one of those, and that's why I left BIS. So, University of London, I go back a long way. I was a postgraduate at UCL at the end of the 1960s. I worked for 10 years at Imperial, when Imperial was still part of the Federation, and I was principal at Queen Mary for 10 years. So a huge part of my life has been University of London, one way or the other. And when I was principal at Queen Mary, I was actually Deputy Vice Chancellor to Graham Davis, those who remember Graham. Why 6 years ago did it happen? I mean, these things kind of happen by chance, don't they? I'd spent 4 years as Director General in BIS. I joined in 2008. The day I joined BIS, the world financial system collapsed. So it was quite an interesting time to be in government. I had the last 2 years of the Labour government, and halfway through that, after the first year, Peter Mandelson was parachuted back from Brussels to try and save Gordon Brown. It's an ill-fated expedition. But working with Peter Mandelson for a year was pretty good fun. And then we had the election and the coalition. So I did the first 2 years of the coalition with David Willits, who was wonderful, and Vince Cable was a grumpy old man, even older than that. So I did 4 years, and after 2 years of the coalition, it's kind of exciting, you know, trying to save the science budgets and all the rest, and then it became a bit samey every day. And just at that time, the Vice Chancellor job came up here. And one of the attractions was that it was, for better or for worse, 3 days a week, because I had another job 1 day a week as Deputy Chair of the UK Statistics Authority, which oversees the Office for National Statistics, that produces the numbers, and also the regulator that makes sure that ministers and civil servants don't misuse the numbers. So it was kind of perfect timing. Then there was another bit to your question, which was
about challenges.
Challenges. So for years, the only thing people ever bleated on about in bars about the University of London was Imperial left, didn't they? Isn't that sad? So I spent 10 years at Imperial, and I can tell you during those 10 years, Imperial never had any connection whatsoever with the University of London, even though they were formerly members. So Imperial leaving was more a regularization of a position than an anti-University of London move. So abstracting from that, I think 6 years ago there was a lot of angst in the air. Do the UCLs and the Kings really care about being in the Federation? Why bother? Won't others leave the Federation, therefore the University of London will collapse? What's it for anyway? So then there were challenges like the University of London Union, which had become a complete anachronism. So there was sort of plenty to do, but the fundamental thing really is we have the wonderful School of Art Study worldwide and so on, but actually the reputational base of the university would take one hell of a hit if serious members of the Federation continued to peel off. So the most important thing was to get the Federation rebound in, and in a collegial way, seeing that association and working with the Central University was a good thing. So that was the main priority, and of course to make SAS and worldwide flourish, that needed investment, it needed endless work in Whitehall and other places to try and ensure budgets. And I think we just about held the line. What worries me slightly going forward is there is a major review of higher education taking place. Higher education, UK higher education is one of the great assets and glories of the UK, that suddenly it's under the cosh and being kicked from all angles, student fees, vice-chancellor's salaries, whatever. So this review might well come up with something that is quite perturbatory to the system in terms of fees and income and the rest. So the struggle to kind of maintain positioning, it just goes on. But I think we're in a good place with federal members. Worldwide, 12 of the 18 are now partners in various distance learning ventures, and we throw a breakfast for them every 2 months, and people turn up. And I don't see, in the short term, any chance now of people peeling away from the Federation. We had City join, which was a very big plus. So I think the main angst that I had when I came in has gone away.
So you've led a wonderful achievement in stabilising and giving credibility to the University of London. But the University of London is a very odd creature, isn't it? It's a huge property company, it's a massive international operation, and it's SAS. So what I'd like you to talk about now a little bit is how you balance off those different things, and what's the importance of SAS's and university worldwide academic mission?
I mean, the big difference, what makes us odd, is we don't have tens of thousands of undergraduate students running around the place. Of course, we don't have the 9K a year coming into the institution either. So the financial structure and the academic structure is very different from anything else. But they all fit together in the sense that without the street cred of SAS being viewed nationally as a great asset for the humanities, and there's a side story that when I was Director General in BIS, all the dialogue about the importance of knowledge, economy and all the rest of it, all centred on science and technology, leaving out, in a sense, the vast importance of the humanities and the social sciences. So being in a context where we've got a flagship entity at a national level which supports the humanities and social sciences is a very important ingredient, and that gives us all sorts of national reputational street cred among academic communities and among external observers. Worldwide is unique. It is the greatest distance learning enterprise in the world. There are loads of distance learning things, but they may be things like MOOCs and the rest of it, but ours is really serious degree level stuff. I mean, since 1858, I mean, it just is a remarkable thing that we have opened up access to degree programs and the same content of those degree programs as people get when they come to London to the world. I mean, it just hundreds and thousands of people's lives have been changed by that. And I think for a lot of the external world, that worldwide enterprise is what they see as the unique feature of the University of London. But it won't hold its reputation and brand if it weren't partnering with 12 of our 18 famous institutions in London. And the other side of that coin is the visibility of the University of London within the UK is probably more through SAS than worldwide, because most of the worldwide thing, as it says now, is international. So the two bits balance up really well, I think, in giving us both reputation and visibility.
You've touched on this a little, and I would encourage you to continue to be rude about politicians, but could I ask you now to reflect on the way that the higher education scene has changed over your period as Vice-Chancellor, and how you anticipate it will be developing? And then the hard question, what can we do in the university to try and influence those directions of policy?
So, what do we think the directions of travel are? There's absolutely no doubt in recent years that moving from a grant system to student fees, and some people say, well, why bother? Because it's the same amount of money, you just dish it out into two different headings. And of course it's an accounting trick. If I give you a grant, I've given away my money. If I give you a loan, it's still my money in technical accounting terms. So the move to student loans was actually a technical device to get the money for the universities off UK balance sheet. And it was ideologically also dressed up as it would be good for people who are going to benefit to pay something for their education. But that has, I think, just changed the mood and the culture of the relationship of students to universities and students to university staff. Whether they're directly badged as consumers or customers, that is a very different relationship than teacher-pupil or co-manufacturer of knowledge. And coupled with the thrust for several decades of universities to be competitive, to fight for students, the lifting of the cap. So it's changed the mood music, I think, in universities. It might affect us less because we don't have the undergraduate population. But that's been a major change. I think the other, well, for me, you can make a judgment. I think turning polytechnics into universities was a fundamental mistake. I think polytechnics were valuable things in their own right, with a vocational technical orientation linked to their local communities, and we've lost that, and everybody wants to be a university and get, ticks in all the boxes, and it does not make sense. So I think if I were doing anything with the review that's taking place now, I'd like to find some way to make individual institutions have very different missions. The government, when I was there, thought that introducing fees would lead to people having very different fee levels and people doing 1-year courses, 2-year courses, etc. Everybody is still, roughly speaking, doing 3-year courses for 18-year-olds, and it's just mad. So I think the system is not in a great place as a system. I think individual institutions do wonderful things. And the other thing you have to remember, the way it's structured in the UK, the universities are the research and innovation engine. In some other country, those things are put into separate institutes, but we're doing it within the university context. And so that makes a different kind of breed of academic. Academics who are both teachers and researchers and are expected to interact with the external world, with policy, with industry, and so on and so forth. So life as an academic is much more difficult. The nature of the student relationship to their institutions is very different. And I'm not going to say it. I'm glad to be out of it, but I'm getting too old to adapt. So,
One of the paradoxes, it seems to me, about UK higher education is that it is, on all international comparisons, an absolute leader. It's one of the really jewel in the crown achievements of the UK economy, UK social structure, and so on. And yet the public conversation about universities is always in terms of them being a problem of one kind or another.
yeah.
So how come that paradox, which is rather odd?
Well, part of the reason it's a problem, so when I went to university, only 5% of the age cohort went to university. So 95% of the population and parents had no relationship with universities at all. Now they have something like a 50% participation rate. At least half the country is related to universities in some sense or other through their kids or their grandchildren or whatever. And now the rhetoric around loans and fees grows to be a very negative thing, and that dominates. So you've got at least half the population, more if you include grandparents, thinking of universities negatively. They're rip-off places that make their students live a life of debt.
Well, that's comforting.
Well, that is the major consequence, of the perceptual consequence of the fee structure. Then governments, of course, join in rather stupidly, and I don't understand where the political rhetoric is coming from. There is a real argument about universities, because all this stuff is basically about the poor 50% who acquired debt. What about the other 50% that don't get anything out of the system, those who don't go to university? So I wouldn't be surprised if out of the review that's taking place at the moment, there might not be a serious political debate about rebalancing the amount that's spent on higher education versus further education. And that won't be good news for the universities. But it won't be good news for some universities. The clever ones will link up with FE and merge in very standards. But I think there'll be a major perturbation within the next 2 or 3 years.
Both in previous roles and as VC here, you've travelled a lot internationally. So if the reputation internally within the UK is a little compromised at the moment for good or bad reasons, do you see that reflected worldwide?
Worldwide, people think we're mad. They think the higher education system in the UK is fabulous and don't understand why anybody would be critical of it. And of course they think we're completely mad because of Brexit. So everybody around the world thinks we're completely mad. So do I. You asked me just now about what the University of London's role might be in the debates that ensue. We've already been in them to some extent. We've been talking to the Office for Students, trying to get them to understand that one size doesn't fit all in regulatory frameworks for universities. And in particular, the bureaucracy of the Office for Students looking for value for money and good treatment of UK consumers. And we point out that 99% of our customers aren't in that category, so why are we being considered under the same regulatory framework? We have to work away at that. It's the same with the teaching excellence framework. It's put in place really to ensure value for money for the student loan system and students. And since our students by and large don't access that, again it's mad. So we have been in lots of conversations with civil servants and bureaucrats.
You've been doing those sorts of conversations in one register or another for longer than probably you care to remember. So what's the key to trying to get influence in Whitehall?
Drink. That people, if you see them in conventional working hours in a meeting, there'll be 3 or 4 people sitting around the room taking notes. Everybody's frightened to say anything that might be out of line and so on. So take them for a drink after work.
Okay, that's the Adrian Smith. Go for a drink. Programme beverage. It's moved 250 professional services staff around the building, reorganised things. The heavy lifting on this was done by others, but clearly it was done under your watch. So could you reflect on that and whether that has, in your view, been a success and what it might herald in terms of...
I think it's a fantastic success and I have no part or credit in it whatsoever. It's a complete win-win because I think moving to more modern ways of working and the organisation of work and the location of work really important. And actually, although you might not know it, might not like it, one of the negatives about the University of London that a lot of people from the outside would say in the past was the old-fashioned way in which we have these long corridors and wood panelling and people sitting, and everybody else doesn't work like that anymore. So I think that's a great win. The second win is it frees up all this other space for academic work for our partners, which gives us another huge benefit. So, tick in the box, nothing to do with me, though.
Just as we move towards a close, because of time, can I just ask you to reflect on what you think are your greatest achievements during your tenure as Vice-Chancellor? I think everybody in this room would applaud you for your work you've done. But what have been your greatest achievements, and what bits remain still to be tackled, I think, leading for your success?
Well, one, given my mode of working that I described just now, after work drinking, is that my liver is still intact. I think that's probably my proudest achievement. I think others would need to assess it, but I actually believe there's been a fundamental change in the nature of the relationship with the members of the Federation. That it is now a collegial club. People want to cooperate, they're interested to come and talk together about problems of mutual interest. 12 of them are working with worldwide. I think that is a total transformation over 6 years. SAS is still there. That's another one. Every 5 years somebody asks whether SAS should be there. Every year they ask if people are going to leave the Federation. Those questions have died away. We're still fighting, of course, for funding for SAS, but I think the mood music has changed totally. And worldwide is an unbelievable success. not just in the degree stuff, but our relationships with Coursera and the MOOCs and so on and so forth. So,
and what remains for the successor? What are the biggest challenges?
I think not necessarily just for us, but the whole nature of libraries. You know, we're knee-deep in libraries. All around the higher education and wider sectors, people are having to think, what are libraries for these days? You know, the idea that everybody goes to a shelf and picks up a book and signs it out and takes it home and reads it and brings it back. I mean, that kind of notion of library is obviously totally subverted by digitization, online. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but very large numbers of students go to libraries for somewhere warm to sit with their laptop. I mean, that is a totally different usage of space. And so it brings to bear other costs of running a library as if it's still a library when the world around us is changing. So I think that's an interesting challenge going forward. And of course, the biggest challenge to the Federation essentially is we've got all these great institutions in London, but it's all for naught if students can't afford to come and live here. So the accommodation issue for students. And all this against the background where actually there's a national mood music that London and the South East is a bad thing, these bastards have all the money and Huddersfield is very poor and so on and so forth. And I think one has to work hard to demonstrate that actually London is a huge asset for the UK and a net exporter of knowledge and people. And the University of London has done and will, I hope, play a crucial role in that. We're a sort of permanent member of London Higher, which tries to look at the common denominator of things which are important to higher education across the whole of London. And we need to fight on things like accommodation. We need to fight the national mood music that sort of pretends you could pick up a UCL and read it in Gateshead and the world would be a better place. It wouldn't.
Now, wrong with Huddersfield.
I thought you were from Gateshead, that's right.
Manchester, actually. Just finally, one of the interests that you and I share in outside work is an interest in growing things, growing vegetables, fruit, all the rest of it. So the University of London's a vegetable. What kind of vegetable is it?
So, we've already decided the University of London has many, many layers. But onions are boring, so I think a globe artichoke. You can pick off these leaves and they're each magnificent. You dip one in a bit of vinegar and one in a bit of thing. And then occasionally you come across one and you think, ugh.
So it's not just drinking, it's eating as well. Adrian Smith, can I, on behalf of all of us, thank you for not just this interview, but also for the leadership you've offered to the university over your tenure here, and wish you all the very, very best for the future. Well, you're not quite at the point of stopping yet, but can you join me in thanking Adrian for
Thank you, Rick, and particularly thank you, Adrian. I'd like to echo what Rick's just said there. Adrian's seen through a huge amount of change here, and the organisation is in so much better shape now than it was when he arrived. We've now come to the end of the formal agenda, and we have a Q&A session. I've got one question that I wanted to pick up that wasn't covered upstairs, tangential to FM, and that was with regards to the costs of security and how that was being funded. We did cover upstairs that the Guardian reported over 400,000, but That figure was as of April, and it's now, I think, beyond that. It's another 300,000 on top of that, so almost like $750,000. But there was a discrepancy, a misunderstanding of how that's being funded from this year. This financial year, it's being funded out of contingency. I have to say the Board of Trustees are very supportive of the way in which we have handled the very difficult circumstances that we've been put under. There have been, I think, 5 occupations prevented as a result of the security that we've had. We will think about how we manage security going forward in the autumn if the protests continue. I really hope they don't, but the clarion calls are there, so we suspect that it might continue. I did say earlier that there's absolutely no change in the direction from the board. They were very clear that we cannot make changes on ideological ground, and we cannot make promises we can't keep. We're going to deal with this in a very measured and thoughtful way, but it has to be done on the basis of us acting as a university and having that academic mission first and foremost. There is a couple of questions about how senior appointments are made. I'm going to suggest that I put that reply on the intranet. Simon Kane will develop that, and there will be a written response. Do I have any other questions from the floor? No? In that case... oh, okay, sorry. Do you need the microphone?
I think probably. Someone comments as opposed to questions.
Okay. Nice, put it in nice big text for me. Okay, so there's one about the FM discussion being part of this meeting. I thought it was such an important discussion at this moment in time. There was a lot of interest, and as you can see from the number of people that were upstairs, that having a dedicated half an hour to it was helpful. In future, well, we'll have to decide whether or not we have separate meetings or cover FM in this meeting. But I think it deserved a full half an hour, and I was conscious that the agenda here wouldn't allow for that length of time. Could the dates and times of all these start meetings be made earlier than they currently are? I'm sure they can be. There's a couple of hellos and aids.
No, that was just testing.
Oh, okay. Okay, and there's a reflection that people would have liked to have heard more about Adrian's views on polytechnics and other things, and perhaps we can feed that into Adrian's successor and suggest that we hear more from the top. Thanks very much. Copy, sir.